We've had a lot of growth these past couple of years in this business, and I want to show you from the ground up what it's like to start your next business after exit. You're going to hear all about it here.
Walking down the street, thinking about her exit, breaking down the steps so every founder gets it. She's the exit whisperer, she's opening the door. It started with a whisper, now that whisper's gonna roar. She just sold her company, and here you get the real story. Shh, you could be next. Walking down the street, thinking about her exit.
Welcome to season 7 of The Exit Whisperer. I am back and I'm so excited to be here with as you know, I always do a starter solo episode. So it's really exciting to be here and I have so many updates for you guys. I can't even wait to tell you. I realize that these solo podcasts are really great because they allow me to build the Whisper Group in real time in public. And the journey from season 1 to season 7 now has been really just wild. So we launched the business in May of 2024. So I've been doing this for about a year and a half at the time of this recording, almost 2 years now at the time of this recording. By the time you hear it, it'll definitely be about 2 years when I'm thinking about it. And a lot has happened. So I think some of the things that I want to tell you about specifically with the business, it's really exciting. It took us just over a year to cross the threshold of being a true 7-figure business, which was a monumental accomplishment. I forget how hard it is to go from 0 to 1. I'd been building Likeable for 14 plus years before I sold it. And I was way out of that space of the early stage of scale, the early stage where you have no idea where your next dollar's coming from or how you're going to rob Peter to pay Paul and make it all work. The beginnings are so hard. And crossing that $1 million threshold felt like a real milestone to me for a number of reasons. First, I believe the number, and I can't tell you the exact stat because I have this argument over and over everywhere. I see it online in different places. Somewhere between 2 to 4% of women-owned businesses ever cross beyond the 7-figure threshold. So that's first. That was monumental. It was also monumental because I felt like it meant that we had proof of concept. We were onto an idea that stuck. But what surprised me about hitting that 7 figures was I was okay, we're at 7 figures now. Okay, we're all going to be making a good amount of money and it's all going to be great. We're going to be taking a lot of money out of the business. And the reality is that is still so early stage. I'd love to say oh, yeah, we're making so much money and I'm making so much money and it's all so great. But the reality is, this business is still in its infancy. And so all of that to say, those of you who are out there who are listening to this, who are grappling with I don't understand, I am billing so much. I am on paper, this looks so great. Where is my cash? You're not alone. That happens through the entire start of a scale of a business. It takes a while to really have your cash flow match up with what your P&L is showing. And it's just to say that, of course, I come from a space where I've already exited. Of course, I come from a space where I have comfort and stability. But if I'm looking at the business on the business alone, it really puts me back to that space of starting something from nothing, of achieving a milestone and yet still not really being able to feel it. So I just wanted to put that out there for you guys so that you knew. Okay, so that's the business. The business is so exciting. Oh, another cool thing about the business. So you know how the Whisper Group advises female founders on how to get ready for their exit, right? And how to get maximum value at exit and how to have an exit that is happy and healthy and strong and exactly what you want out of life. That's really, really the premise of what the Whisper Group does. And how that work is done by a female founder who's already exited, who already exists in my community. That community used to be called the Whisper Collective. So I'd say, okay, we'll source from the Whisper Collective and we'll help pair you with an advisor and give you an advisor who's going to help you get to exit. I've renamed that community of exited female founders, and I'll tell you why. Whisper stands for the 7 tenets of building a highly sellable business, right? Understanding your why, your how, your income, your secret sauce, your profit, your executive team or your ecosystems, and your roar factor or your resilience factor, how you're going to withstand all of this, right? So Whisper is extremely relevant for women who are in the process of building and looking at exit. But for women who've already exited, we're dealing with different challenges and different problems and different aspects that we want and need in a community. And that's why I renamed that community Acquired Not Retired. And I'll tell you why I did that. The thing about Acquired Not Retired, so many women I have spoken to, and you've heard it. If you're like a loyal listener to this podcast, you know, like very few women, regardless of the size of exit, say, okay, I sold. Now I'm just going to like sit on my ass. You know what I mean? Like look at Ann Malum. Ann Malum, former podcast guest, built Solid Core, sold it. Amazing, amazing episode, right? Talks all about how she sold for $100 million, netted $100 million, breaks down her portfolio, talks about it all the time. And yet she is still on social media all the time, educating, doing different kinds of consulting programs, speaking, writing books, doing that kind of stuff. Why? Because after we sell, regardless of the size of exit, we almost always need to continue to use our brains in some way that either gives back, makes money, helps us define our legacy. These are the things that matter to an exited female founder. And that's why I decided to rename the community Acquired Not Retired, which is like one of my favorite parts. All right, we're taking this off. We're going to do a little zhuzh to the hair. And we're going to talk about what's actually next. So told you about the business. Yay. Let's talk about the podcast. So I made a decision 7 seasons in. We have a solid listener base. We have a targeted listener base. It's all women that are thinking about exiting or folks who work in exit planning, right? They want to understand the mindset of a female founder who has gone through this experience. And women who listen to this podcast are typically women or men who want to understand what goes into an exit. And I try and do as transparent of a job as possible in telling that story. I want people to hear these real stories. I want to be able to connect with a guest and have them like really like get in it with me in a deep way. And it took a full 7 seasons before I ever considered doing ads on this podcast. And here's why. Truly, I'm going to give you the 3 reasons. First, I wanted to make sure that I had audience, which I did. It took time to build, but I definitely did. I wanted to make sure that I could add value to a sponsor. Wanted to make sure I could add value to a sponsor. Like, could I get them a return, right? Tons of people sell podcast ads all the time. I wanted to make sure that when I signed on a sponsor, that I really felt confident saying like, I know that my audience will love you. And then the last piece that I wanted to wait, I didn't want to bring on sponsors that I wasn't obsessed with. I really didn't. I didn't want to be hawking stuff. You know what I mean? I didn't want to like just take any kind of sponsor that would come on. So I really decided that I was going to bring on sponsors slowly that had ads that were relevant to my audience that I personally believed in. So I'm going to tell you about the 3, and I only do a few at a time because I do not want to inundate. It's like really, really important to me. So I want to tell you about the 3 that I chose to start and where we are today. So my first choice was an amazing tax strategy group called Wealthrive. So one of the areas, I think I talk about this. I don't know if I've talked about this before, but one of the areas where I really, really have some like, if I have any regrets actually, they're not with the acquirer. They are with my own ability to plan ahead with tax strategy. I really got hosed. And I have a lot of reasons that I think I got hosed, but I'll tell you about that on the episode with Jenna from Wealthrive because I'll talk all about it. But I do think it's really, really important that people understand tax strategy. And I will tell you that with tax strategy, I felt like when I was paying taxes, and I still feel this, by the way, I'm contributing to the greater good of society. I'm making money, I pay taxes, and that contributes to those that need help and helps make the government run and all of that stuff. However, there are completely legal ways to minimize your tax liability pre-exit, at exit, post-exit, and I did not take a second to learn about any of it. And that's actually part of why the Whisper Group exists today, because of those types of mistakes. That's what really motivated me to do it. And Wealthrive is an amazing partner for that. And so I can't wait for you to meet Jenna. She's going to be on the podcast this season. And I can't wait for you to hear more about Wealthrive. Next, Theory Planning Partners. I met Caitlin, their founder, at a conference, and we were on a panel together, and we looked at each other and we just knew. It was like the ultimate in like no bull energy, full like holistic approach to wealth. And for Caitlin and Theory, they do business a little differently than other wealth managers. Now, I have a lot of good relationships with wealth managers, and most of them charge for assets under management. In other words, the money you put in, they take a percentage of that and you don't feel it, right? Because they charge by assets under management, which is great. And it's great. They want to talk to you, really excited if you have a lot of assets under management. But what about when you're building your business and you don't yet have that luxury? 80% of your net worth is usually tied up in your business. And so what Theory does is they do what's called flat fee financial advising. So they do an incredible job, and Caitlin is going to tell you all about this. You pay them what I think is a completely reasonable monthly fee, and they help you understand how to extract the wealth from your business today, how to diversify your planning in a completely like non-biased way. And we'll talk more about that when we talk to her. It's just like, she's incredible and her energy is incredible. And what they do is so deeply valuable. Okay. So first I wanted to do tax, then I wanted to do wealth. And then I really wanted to tap back into my own entrepreneurial roots. And so I wanted to share something that I've been using that really like knocked my socks off. And I will tell you, you'll hear more about this on the episode. It helped me close business 10 times faster. It was directly responsible for helping me cross the $1 million of business, get to from 6 figures to 7. And that is Dubsado. Dubsado is an incredible platform for service-based businesses primarily, like a lot of creative entrepreneurs and folks like that. And it helps with having your systems like as one consolidated infrastructure. I will tell you, the way I send proposals, get them accepted, and get paid is 10 times faster than it ever was before. Now, here's what's cool about this, okay? So I love Dubsado, and I can't wait to tell you all about it. I can't wait to tell you everything about it and share a discount code with you and all of that stuff. But here's what's cool. This business was bootstrapped by a husband and wife entrepreneur, Dubsado. They did not raise funds for this tech platform. And I am going to interview Becca, the founder, pre-exit, about some of her exit aspirations. So it's really, really interesting. I can't wait to talk to her about that and then just tell you like a little bit more in some of our ads about my personal experience with Dubsado, because it blew my mind, you guys. I'm not kidding. In fact, if you go to Dubsado and you sign up, the code is WHISPER. I'll tell you right now, for 30% off. It's so reasonable. It's such a strong product. And I can't wait to tell you more about it. So I thought I would take time on this solo podcast to tell you about each of the sponsors I chose. I had a lot, if I'm being honest, there were a lot of people who wanted to sponsor. And I didn't want them to sponsor unless they met the following criteria. I had to love them, I had to use them, and I had to feel very confident that I could get them a return based on what their offering was. And that's why I'm so excited to test this season with you guys. Like, it's going to be great. If I can add value to your lives while helping offset the costs of the podcasts, it's a win for my business, it's a win for you guys, and it's a win for everyone. I'm so excited about that. Okay, so with all that being said about sponsors, let's talk about being on the road, which is my current life. It's really interesting, you guys. I stopped taking clients. I have a few legacy clients, but most of the clients are done through the advisors at the Whisper Group. And that's very intentional, right? We talk about not wanting to be so founder-led. We talked about having like a strong team. We talked about all of that when we're building our businesses, how important that is. And so now I'm primarily on the road speaking, recording, and really focused on education in the M&A space. Because I think that it's really important that while we have individual one-on-one clients, we also are able to educate the broader community with content that is absolutely free. And so I've been on the road speaking, I've been recording, I've been doing a lot of work in this space that is really focused on how can I possibly create the most impact at scale for all of you, whether that's through the Whisper Group with Maggie and my team and the whole group, whether that's through my individual speaking, whether it's through things like this podcast. I believe it's essential that we provide opportunities for you guys to consume content in however you feel you digest it best. Now, when it comes to being on the road, I will tell you, I am both thoroughly enjoying it and struggling a little bit. It's hard to be on the road. It's hard to be away from my youngest son who's still at home. It's hard to figure all of this out, right? And I know that we struggle with this stuff all the time. It's really hard when you're building and you're working around the clock and you say to yourself, oh my God, is this really worth it? But I think back to something that I said in season 1 when I think about that. In season 1, I remember I interviewed quite a few people who had 9-figure exits. I interviewed Sheila Main, who sold Sheila G's Brownie Brittle. I interviewed Stephanie Nutty Olson, who sold We Are Rosie. These were big 9-figure exits. And I remember in the beginning, I used to look at them and be like, oh my God, did you have any self-doubt? Did you have any self-doubt when you did this? And they would look at me and be like, no, I really didn't. And I remember it was the women who were building things that were truly epic, that they had this deep sense of conviction about it. And I will say with the Whisper Group, although I don't have a need to build that to be a 9-figure exited business, I can tell you that on my hardest days, on my most tired days, on the days where I am feeling what the heck am I doing? I am reminded of the complete and utter conviction I have in that business. And so what I would say to you, if you are in a position where you're either on the road or burning yourself into the ground or doing something where it's really, really hard, I want you to really take a minute and take a look in the mirror. And I want you to ask yourself, do you truly, thoroughly believe in this business? And if you do, and if you see a path to numbers working, then you keep going. That is what I remind myself as I am on the road when there are delays due to weather, or you guys are probably seeing this in the spring, but I had some kind of weather tying me up in some of these road trips. Really, really just think about your conviction. And if you're not sure, it's okay. When I was building Likeable, I wasn't always sure. But I did know that there was good, strong life in that business. Now with the Whisper Group, I would say I'm pushing myself really hard because I have absolute conviction. And I think that that is what might make an even stronger result, if I'm being honest. I had a good result with Likeable, but I think it was held back by a lot of fear. And I think that if I could go back and look at that girl in the face and say listen, it's gonna work, you could do it, I would. And so all of this to say, look in the mirror, ask yourself honestly, give yourself a little pep talk, ask yourself again. And if the answer is you have the conviction, go for it. I wish all of you a season of success for yourself, however that looks. Whatever the life you want to live, whatever the size of business you want to build, I am wishing you to get exactly what you want. Here's to a great season of The Exit Whisperer. Let's do this.